Everyone has something about themselves that they hate. They want to lose weight or have a pointed nose, but I have a less conventional insecurity. I'm just too pretty. I know what you're thinking. I'm just trying to humble brag or find a reason to complain. But seriously, being hot is not all it's cut out to be. Would you believe that these good looks got my neighbor's son kidnapped? Honestly, that's what I feel like I'm facing right now. I'm not trying to complain, but I'm about to tell you the story of how being pretty ruined my life. I don't really know where to start the story exactly. I had always been pretty. I was a super cute baby that used to win a bunch of pageants. As a kid, I loved it. I got to meet a bunch of friends and always came home with a shiny new trophy or sometimes cool prizes. This one time, I went home with an entire collection of new dresses for my dolls. I was literally screaming with joy when it was handed to me, and people were taking pictures. It was the happiest moment of my life up to that point. But that excitement was all about to be shut down. When I went backstage to get changed, I heard the other contestants talking about me. "She thinks she's just so much better than everyone else," one said. "Yeah, I mean, she may be pretty, but she's so mean and stupid," another said. I turned around and ran right back to my mom, still in my fancy dress. I thought these girls were my friends. I always planned on sharing my prize with them. This was only the first of several bad encounters with friendships. As I got older, it got even worse. I couldn't keep any girlfriends, and it seemed that they all hated me. People would actively leave me out of things and start all sorts of rumors. One night after I saw pictures of yet another party I wasn't invited to, I cried my eyes out. My mom came in and asked me what was wrong. When I told her about my problems at school, she just told me they were jealous. "That's what girls do when they see someone this pretty," she said. "Don't worry, you'll be laughing one day when you have a rich husband and amazing life. You can get through this. Don't worry about what others think. Worry about you." I took her words to heart and decided to really focus on me. Since I wasn't distracted with a social life, I dedicated all my spare time to my schoolwork. I was surprised to find out just how much I loved math. Math is just so interesting and easy for me. Even when other students seemed to be struggling, I was ahead of the curve. My teacher even let me do an independent study so that I can take some advanced coursework. I was so excited and proud that he acknowledged how good my math skills were. Unfortunately, this ended up being one of the worst things to ever happen to me. After this one really huge exam in the class, a lot of people failed. I mean, like half the class. The teacher was super disappointed in the class. He started the whole thing off with a long lecture about how most people needed to put more time into their studies. "You guys should really put more effort in. It's not impossible. Just ask Scarlett for pointers. She got a perfect score." Suddenly, all eyes were on me. I knew he meant it as a compliment, but he just made my life a whole lot harder. Every time I looked up, I noticed people glaring at me and whispering things under their breath. I just gathered my books and laid my head low. I was planning on just leaving quietly when someone stuck out their leg and made me trip. I fell and all of my stuff went everywhere. Everyone pointed and laughed at me. People all around me made snarky comments about how I wasn't looking so smart now. I was about to cry when suddenly a boy in class told them all to shut up. I looked up and saw Anthony, one of the boys from my class. He stayed after class and helped me pick up all my stuff. He said the same thing everyone else told me. "They're just jealous of you." He asked if I would be willing to tutor him, and I wholeheartedly agreed. I thought that maybe I had finally found a friend. We started meeting after school at the library every day and worked on math. Although he always seemed to change the topic to something else. We talked about our favorite movies and books. We even started to hang out outside of tutoring sessions. I was so happy to have a friend for the first time, a friend who didn't seem insecure about my looks. I guess in some ways he was a little too excited about my looks. There were quite a few times I felt like he was trying to flirt with me. Every time I got uncomfortable about it, he would just say he was kidding, and I was just too cocky to assume he would be into me. It was always kind of insulting, but it's not like I had much experience with friends. We always went back back to normal and continued hanging around and talking, so I didn't think anything was weird between us. That was until one day when he officially asked me out. He showed up to my house one Saturday in his best outfit with a handful of flowers. When I asked him what he was doing, he said he had finally gathered the courage to ask me out. I felt bad, but I just wasn't attracted to him. I only saw us as friends, and I wanted us to continue to stay friends. At first, he said he was fine with it. He decided he was going to go home and take some time to be alone for the rest of the day because he was embarrassed. I tried to call him on Sunday, but he didn't answer my calls. I figured he must have been busy or something. When I went to school the next week, he completely ignored me. Like, he wouldn't even look at me in the hallway. I tried to text him about it the next day, but he completely ghosted me. Just like that, I was back to having no friends at all, just because I wouldn't date him. I thought he cared about me as a person, but he turned into a jerk real fast after he was rejected. It went beyond just ignoring me in the halls. He even started to talk bad about me. One day I overheard him talking with some friends. I was sitting under the bleachers, eating my lunch alone, when I heard them talking about our math class. They were complaining about how impossible and difficult it was. The one guy made a comment about how he had no idea how anyone was able to pass the class. A girl chimed in that I was able to do it, and then went on about how surprising it was that the prettiest girl in class was also the smartest. That's when Anthony piped in. "You know, she isn't even that smart," he said, irritated. "Then why did you go to her for tutoring?" the girl asked. He went on to say how he only did it to possibly date me, and how I was actually really boring and dumb. Anthony went on telling stories about how I never stayed focused enough to actually teach him anything, and how I always thought he was hitting on me. He completely left out the part where he was rejected, and instead said he would never be with a girl so stuck up and crazy like me. Then he told them the unthinkable. Honestly, the only reason she's passing math is because she keeps going to the teacher for a little extra credit, if you know what I mean. I audibly gasped and ran from out of the bleachers. I asked to speak with him privately in front of them. It was obvious that I had heard their entire discussion. He refused, insinuating that he didn't want to be alone with a dirty girl like me, and to stop being so obsessed. I screamed at him and called him out for changing his ways just because I rejected him. How dare he? Finally, when I thought I had a friend, it turns out he was just a jerk. It didn't take long for the rumors from that day to get spread around school. The first was that I was obsessed with Anthony. The second, that I slept with my teacher for good grades. People pointed at me in hallways and made snarky remarks in my classes. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I was called to the principal's office. He asked me if I had heard the rumors about me circling around the school. I said yes, but that they were not true. The principal's reaction? Well, maybe if you didn't act like that, rumors like this wouldn't start in the first place. I couldn't keep it bottled in. I blew up. How dare he? My mom was called in and they let her know I would be expelled for my bad behavior. I ended up being homeschooled for the rest of high school. Sure, being homeschooled meant I missed out on things like dances and peers, but it sure beats having to deal with all of the monsters I went to school with. My mom decided to bring me along to some of her social events so I could meet other people. That's where I met Dennis. Dennis was attractive, like super hot. On top of that, he was really rich and currently in school to take over his father's insurance company. By every definition, Dennis was perfect, at least on the outside. See, Dennis was also a very superficial person who happened to be into me. I didn't mind going on dates with him in the beginning. It's not like I got out much. We always had a lot of fun at first. He took me to extravagant restaurants, and we even took a weekend trip out of the country once. My parents were so happy with him and always pressured me to make it official. He was able to give me everything they couldn't. If I married Dennis, I would be rich and never have to work a day in my life. As much as that sounds like a dream to most people, I always wanted to have a career. One day, I got an admissions letter from a top university a few hours away. I got in on a full scholarship. I was overjoyed, and my parents were very proud. Dennis, on the other hand, really let his true colors show. He went on lecturing me about how I wouldn't be able to handle college, and that I should just marry him and start our lives together. I got so insulted when he made the comment that girls only go to college to find high-earning husbands, so why not skip a step? I broke up with him immediately. Much to the dismay of my parents, they still held on hope that I would come crawling back to Dennis once I got a taste of the real world. There was a part of me that also thought I would be crawling back, but I actually had a great time at school. I made a lot of friends, and my peers seemed to appreciate my intelligence more than my beauty. I even started dating the perfect guy. Now, he wasn't rich or conventionally hot, but that didn't matter to me. Leon was kind, and that's what really mattered to me. To top it all off, he was blind, so I know that he had to like me for me. He came from a poor family and he was in school to be a social worker. He didn't care about money and just wanted to help people. I loved how kind and caring he was. But my parents didn't share my feelings. They insisted that I break up with him at once and go back to Dennis. Dennis even called me one night crying that I take him back. He went on about how much he loved me and how much better I deserved than some blind social worker. But I refused. I was happy, even if it wasn't the kind of happy everyone else expected of me. My parents and I got into a huge fight about it during the holidays. They even invited Dennis to the dinner where I introduced them to Leon. "What is he doing here?" I yelled. Dennis and my parents continued to tell me how Leon wasn't right for me when he was sitting right there. They went on about how it wasn't fair my beauty was being wasted on someone who couldn't even appreciate it. Leon finally piped in at this part, saying, "If you think the best part about Scarlett is just her looks, then you guys are the ones who are blind." With that, we both stormed off and drove all the way back to his tiny apartment near the university. I continued to live with him and didn't go home at all. Then, late one night, we heard a struggle outside. Our neighbor's son was being dragged away, calling out for help. We immediately called the police, who came and interviewed us about this scary situation. Weirdly enough, I got a text from my parents out of the blue. They were all asking how things were going and if I was doing okay. I took their odd timing as a blessing and decided to go and visit on the weekend while Leon was away. When I arrived, they were super nice. And surprise, Dennis was waiting with them in the driveway. They said how sorry they were to hear about how Leon went missing. "Why would you guys think Leon went missing?" I asked, rather surprised. Dennis had a breakdown. He was a gigantic, blubbering mess. This trust fund hottie suddenly looked so pathetic, sobbing all over my feet in the middle of my driveway. Turns out, Dennis hired people to kidnap Leon, but they accidentally grabbed my neighbor by mistake. My parents helped him hatch the plan, and they continued to insist this was a sign of true love. I immediately called the cops on all of them. The cops found the neighbor's kid being hauled up at one of his parents' warehouses. Lucky for Dennis and my parents, money gets you pretty far. They settled outside of court with my neighbor's family. I'm not sure what they were given, but it was enough to buy a luxurious house far away from the university. As much as I thought this was the start of my happy ending, I realized that it was actually just the beginning of a new nightmare. With my parents and Dennis out of my life, it was just me and Leon. At first, this was paradise, but it didn't take long for me to grow tired of being his caretaker. He never did find a job, and he grew rather comfortable having me pay all the bills and do everything around the house. In a way, just as Dennis had used me for my looks, Leon was using me for everything else. He became completely dependent on me, which was hard in more ways than one. For starters, it put a lot of stress and pressure on me. I started to resent our relationship. I asked him once what he would do without me, hypothetically, and he said he would just die. A week later, he proposed. How could I say no? The wedding is coming up, and I think I realize now more than ever, I never actually loved Leon. I was just happy to get with the first guy who liked my personality. Validation is not the reason you should be in a relationship, but I can't tell him I want to break up.